when we're dealing with wedding cakes, portion sizes and serving guides, sort of the same kind of thing, but you might call them different things. They're quite important at all different stages. So when a couple are looking to buy a wedding cake, they're looking for someone to book with. At that early stage, they're wondering about the size of it. Now, it might be that couples don't know about sizes, and the number of guests is directly linked to the size of the cake, or can be. So in that sense, we have to sort of let them know, because when you think about what couples are up to when they're wedding planning, the cake is just one small part of it. They're doing so many other things, and it's sometimes, as a cake maker, it's easy to forget actually that they've got hundreds of other things, hundreds of other suppliers to talk to, hundreds of other things to organise. So if we can make life a little bit easier for them, and give them helpful information, all to the better, really. If you can make a couple's journey seem really easy, they're much more likely to book with you, and that kind of thing. So I would say that when even before you talk to the couple, have some information available on your website. If you haven't got a website, get one, because you really need one. Or on your Facebook page, or wherever couples are going to go and see, or on your Google profile, because you can put PDFs and things like that. Have some information on there. I actually have my portion guides as a lead magnet, so couples have to actually ask. They request it, they give me their email, and I have an automation, which means they get it sent immediately as soon as I've got their email. But it means I've got their email, so I can then talk to them and send them other emails as well. And it also means that I know who's looking at my site and they're serious about it. If you're going to put your email in to get some information, you're moderately interested in what that information is. You're not just sort of, faffing about. You've got that level of commitment. So that's why I do that. Then when you're actually talking to your couples, so either on a consultation, or they phone you up, or at a wedding fair, you've got to have some sort of an idea about serving guides, portion sizes. So it's one of the first questions that I ask my couples, actually. How many guests, how many people do you want this cake to serve? Now, I know that some bakers ask for the number of guests and then suggest a cake that's for 70% of that. I tend not to do that. I tend to say, how many guests are you having? You want a cake for that many then. Some couples will say, oh no, let's have a few less. Let's do it for a few less. And some will say, oh no, it's about right. And some will actually ask for different size portions. I'll talk about different size portions in a minute. So I always say, how many guests? So if they say 90 guests, I say, okay, so you want a cake for 90. And they'll either say yes or no, about 60 we actually want. Well, some couples come back with, we've got so many for the day and so many for the evening. In which case I say, okay, well, how many of those do you want cake for then? And that's part of the conversation that we have. So you guide the couple and suggest what you think is best with their circumstances. And usually they're happy to be guided, because you're the expert at the end of the day. It's a good idea. I think when we talked about wedding fairs before, and we had a wedding fair thread in the group, I can't remember who it was. Was it Louise? I can't remember who it was. But someone said, if you've got dummy cakes on your stall, know how many portion sizes those cakes will feed, because your couples will ask you. So, for example, the cakes behind me, in fact, I put the little labels up this morning because I didn't have the information to hand, but that one will be about 53 servings. This one, because it's square and because the they're quite deep. It can either be sort of 74 fairly big sizes, or if you sort of double up and have, you know, cut your tier in half, it can be up to sort of 148. It depends on the size. We'll talk about sizes in a minute. And then that one over there, that would be around about 85. So know your portion sizes. And if couples say to you, oh, yes, we've got about 50 people, or we've got about 100 people, you can then say, oh, you might want this, this, and this cake. Okay. Now I have, this is always to hand. I have it here so that if I'm in my office and someone phones me up, I can grab this and talk to them immediately about sizes. So it's got the different sizes and the number of servings. I've got a PDF of this. I'll put it in the group so that you can have a look. You're very welcome to actually borrow my serving sizes if you want them. Don't just lift the whole thing though, mainly because it's got my name all over it. But you're more than welcome to borrow the actual cake sizes. Let's see that. If you look up cake sizes on Google, you just get loads and loads of different ones. And of course, a cake is only cut into so many slices at the behest of the person who is actually cutting it. Most venues know how to do the long cutting as opposed to the wedge cutting. You know what I mean, don't you? Where you cut, even in a circle cake, you cut along and then you cut it up. Most venues know how to do that. If you feel you need to, then put a cutting guide in your cake information. Look up cake cutting guides on the internet. You get loads of them, loads of images you can find on, you know, how to cut up different sizes of cake. But yes, but I'll put the PDF of this in the group if you would like to borrow it and have a look and borrow the sizes. But I find this really useful. So of course I've got there's my round cakes. So how many servings and different tiers. And I also on here, when the couple receive this, because they have to ask for this, as I've said, it does have a guide price. So it gives them a kind of an idea of, you know, the kind of cost they're looking at, which obviously prevents those who think they're going to get a cake for £100 from, you know, asking and then being disappointed. So there we go. So that's cake. So I have that handy. If I'm in a consultation with someone, I definitely make sure I have it by me. If someone just phones me up, I mean, I'm up here, I can grab it and have a look. If I'm elsewhere, I'll say, well, I haven't got my size chart to hand at the moment, but I can, you know, I can let you know. But it's one of the main things that people ask, you know, or people need to know about is the number of servings they need in the cake. Now, there are different types of serving. You might know this already, but I'll tell you anyway. There are three main standard sizes for servings. Your smallest is your what's called a finger serving, which is 1 inch by 1 inch. And that's usually what fruitcake is chopped up into. So if you've ever been to a wedding and there's been a fruitcake, the chances are you get a tiny little slither of it. Some couples want that as for a sponge cake as well, because they just want, they might have, you know, quite a few guests, but they don't want to have loads and loads of cake. And they want guests just to have a sort of a tasting of it, really, just to show willing. So a 1 inch by 1 inch. And depending on the depth of your cake, my cakes range from sort of either 4 inches, 5 inches or 6 inches. Now, a 6 inch deep 1 by 1 is going to give you a moderate bit of cake there. If your tiers are sort of 8 inches deep, the chances are you're going to get in one slice, you're going to get actually 2 servings in that, aren't you? So bear that in mind as well. So that's a finger slice, which is 1 by 1. Then you have a party slice, which is 1 inch by 2 inches. And that is the sort of standard size. That's the size that I quote all my cakes at. You'll get so many 1x2 slices out of this cake. And then there's the dessert slice, which is 2x2, which is obviously slightly bigger. Some couples want their cake for actually the dessert course of their meal, their food. And this can be, sometimes this can be a conversation that you have with them. You know, if you're aware that they're on a budget, for example, they're perhaps doing a DIY wedding. And you can suggest to them, well, actually, I could do the cake so that it's the dessert course, so you don't have to actually produce a dessert as well. Some couples will welcome that, of course. But it's, you know, if you offer it, then you're just giving them the information and they can decide for themselves. So those are the 3 different sizes. So 1x1, 1x2, 2x2. Most venues will cut to standard. So if it's a fruit, they'll generally cut 1x1. If it's a sponge, they'll generally cut 1x2. So if the couple has asked for something different, just make sure you tell the venue what it's, you know, what it's got to be cut to, if you like. And the different portion sizes, as I've said, can help your couples decide on, you know, if they're on a budget or if they want to give their guests more choice. You know, if they want 3 tiers, but they want their guests to be able to sample each of those 3 tiers, then obviously you're going to have bigger sizes, that kind of thing. So it's all in the consultation. You know, it's all in there. Oh, morning, lots of people here. Morning, Louise. Morning, Jenny. Morning, Amber. Jenny says, a customer asked for a 16-inch round cake for the baby. Yeah, I can't do 16 inches. I think 14 is the biggest I can do. The only way I could do it, if I was really pushed, I would probably have to do it in quarters and then make a circle out of the 4 quarters. That's if I had to do it, that's how I'd do it. But otherwise, I can't do 16. I think most of us have got standard ovens. I mean, I think my oven is 60 centimeters wide, which was moderately standard. It was the larger size of the standard ovens. I think you can get 55 or you can get 60, I think. But no, I can't do much bigger than that either. But a 16-inch cake is going to give you loads of portions and it's going to be really heavy as well. I mean, a 12-inch is heavy enough. I can't imagine how heavy a 16-inch would be. But it may be, I wonder if you could talk about having, I don't know, a 16-inch dummy, possibly, so that the look of the cake is right. But then you can produce, you know, tray bakes or whatever it is, which can be ready cut so that the venue or whoever has got the cake to actually give out to the guests. That would be one way around. That's what I would suggest if I was asked that. I hope that's helpful. Morning, Danny. Morning. So yes, so it's to do with the size of the portion, so finger, party or dessert, and it's really to do with talking to your couples and guiding them, because although, you know, there's that saying the customer is always right, the customer don't always know what they want, particularly with wedding cakes, because most of them, you know, the chances of them ever having bought a wedding cake before are fairly slim. And if they did, it would have been years ago, and things are very different now anyway, more than likely. So it's really up to us to, you know, to help them, to guide them, to give them options, but not at the same time, not overwhelming them with so many options. They go, oh God, I can't cope with this. Because as I said, they're dealing with so many suppliers. and trying to organize so much, you know, it's up to us to try and make life easier for them. I think if we can do that, then we're on a winner, really. So yeah, so talk about different cake sizes, so that if they want to have a dessert course, or if they just want, they've got loads of guests but they don't want to spend, you know, loads and loads on a cake, suggest the finger portions, that kind of thing. And have your guide ready for when they're talking about it, so that you can advise them, because that's what we're here for. I used to Louise. I used to quote on 1 by 2 portions, but found that my venues just cut 1 by 1 regardless. Venues sometimes just do what they want, don't they? At least it's that way and not the other way around. Because if you were expecting 1 by 1 and they did 1 by 2, you'd have guests not getting anything, wouldn't you? So I suppose it's better that way around. I mean, I've never had a couple complain that they've either not had enough or they've had far too much. So, you know, I mean, who's going to complain they've got too much cake? I mean, and I always tell my couples that my cakes are freezable. I never freeze cakes. I never freeze tiers. So when I talk to them, I say, well, if you've got any left over, you can freeze it. You know, it'll freeze up to 3 months and you can come back to it, you know, when you've had your honeymoon and you're having an afternoon, you know, feet up. Oh, yeah, we've got some cake left. Let's have some of that. So I suggest that too. But make sure you freeze it either, you know, on the evening or the day after. Because if you wait a week to freeze it, that's not going to be much good, is it, really? So there we go. You never thought of a dummy? Yes, I know. I deal with dummies all the time. I use dummies all the time. I've got you can see on my top shelf, and those are only some of them. I've got loads in the loft. It's probably an immense fire hazard up there. But knowing about dummy cakes is quite useful, because, you know, you might get a couple that have only got, I don't know, 30 guests, but the bride, and it's usually the bride. I say the bride because it usually is. She wants sort of a big, tall centerpiece cake. So you can tell, because some of them don't know about dummy tiers. They don't know about them. They don't know they exist. So if you suggest to them, well, I could do a dummy tier, so it saves waste. Some of them might go for that. I've done a few dummy tiers for cakes. And I know there's someone in there, is it Nicola, who does actual dummy cakes, and she hires them out, which I think is genius. I don't think I've got any room to keep any. I mean, these get bashed about all over the place. And she put a photo, didn't she, of that beautiful cake with all the flowers, which was mainly dummy. But it had a section, I think she said it had a section of actual cake that the couple could cut into. Oh, brilliant. That's just brilliant. So, yeah. So combining real and dummy is another, thing you can think about when you're consulting your couples. There we go. So that's sort of it, really. That's sort of all we need to know about portion sizes, the different sizes, when to talk when to talk to your couples about it, and having some guides handy so that you're not working it out every time and you're not looking it up every time that someone asks. And I will I'll put a PDF of this in the group so that you can have a look at that if you so wish to use it. Any more questions? It's sort of a quick one today because there's not a lot to say on portion sizes. But I thought I'd chat about it anyway, because I think it's some things that some people have asked about. That's why I chose to talk about it. I go through the group and see what kind of questions people have asked and think, oh, that would be a good one to do. So I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah, I've covered all that. If there's nothing else, I will leave it there and leave you to get on with your day. I hope you have a lovely day. We're getting into wedding season now. I haven't got any more in May, but I've got loads in June. And they're all ones that have got sugar flowers on. So next week I'm starting my marathon sugar flower make. They all seem to, it's like London buses, isn't it? You don't get any for a while and then you get loads and loads all at once. And a lot of mine for the rest of the year actually aren't sugar flower ones. They're either real flowers or they're just naked cakes or whatever it is. But I do love doing my sugar flowers, so that's what I'm up to. So do show us what you're up to. If you're going to wedding fairs, do show us what you're up to, with anything you've sort of, any tips you've got from them. And as you start supplying to wedding fairs, or to weddings rather, to real weddings, do let us know how it goes, giving us any, anything you've learned from it, any tips from it, all that kind of stuff, because the more we find out about all these different weddings and how it's gone and that kind of thing, the better. We'll all, have a hive. What's it called? The hive, the group, the hive mentality. I don't know. I'm waffling now. Anywho, right. We will leave it there. Oh, very good. I'm glad you found it useful. Yes, Louise, it's really useful. Having information like my brochure. I used to put my brochure just on my website, but now it's a lead magnet. They have to ask for it. Then I know that they're serious about wanting it. And I've got people's emails who actually are a bit more committed about wanting a wedding cake. It just gets rid of all those people, dare I say it, other bakers who just want to have a copy of yours so they can copy it. Not that any of you would do that. Of course you wouldn't. So there we go. Yes. So have them as lead magnets, and then you've got their emails then, and it's much, much better. Hive mind. That's the word. Thank you, Claire. I need a hive mind because I can never think of the words. Thank you. Oh, dearie me. Anyhow, yes, I hope that's been useful. Join me in a couple of weeks where I will be talking and we can discuss transporting cakes. I will put a thread up as well. So if anyone's got any tips or hints about transporting cakes, I can then share them in the live as well. And if you've got anything, or any stories of transporting cakes, either good or bad, do let us know, because the more information we have, the better. So there we go. So have a lovely Friday. Have a lovely weekend. It's not a bank holiday on Monday, is it? Is it one of the ones in May that isn't a bank holiday? But now that I don't, I'm not employed and my children aren't in school, I don't know what's a bank holiday and what isn't, because both of them work in retail, so they work on a bank holiday often. So, someone says, "Oh, it's a bank holiday on Monday." Oh, is it? Oh, okay. No idea. When I was teaching, I had them grained in my mind for about 3 years in advance. But anyway, so there we go. So there we are. Have a lovely weekend. Have a lovely day. And I will see you in a couple of weeks when we talk about transporting cakes. All right. See you soon, everybody. Bye.